I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. My name's Jake, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. We got married pretty young, and for the most part, I always thought we had a good, stable relationship. She's smart, beautiful, and honestly, she knows how to turn on the charm when she wants to. But then, little cracks started showing, and looking back, I should have seen the warning signs earlier. It started about 3 months ago. Lisa became more irritable, snapping at me over small things, and her phone started acting weird. She'd hide her texts more, lock her screen, and whenever I tried to see what she was up to, she'd get defensive, accuse me of being paranoid or insecure. She'd say I was overthinking, that she loved me, and I trusted her, or at least I wanted to. But inside, I had this gnawing feeling that something was off. That feeling only grew stronger when I noticed she was working late more often. She'd go to these professional development workshops, saying it was for her career. She's a marketing manager, so I figured it was normal for her to network and learn new skills. But then I found out she was attending a conference downtown last week, a big one, with a bunch of industry heavyweights. She was excited about it, kept telling me how important it was for her growth. What I didn't know, until I accidentally saw it, was that she wasn't just attending workshops. She was meeting someone I'd never even heard her mention before. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I noticed her behavior changed. She was texting more openly, laughing at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, and hiding her screen when I entered the room. I brushed it off, trying to tell myself I was overreacting, but deep down I was starting to suspect something. One night I decided to check her phone. I know, bad move, but I couldn't help myself. I figured maybe I'd catch her in a lie or find some clues. I'd always been a little insecure about her being around other men, especially at those workshops, but I never had proof. And then I saw it. A string of texts with some guy named Mark, a name I didn't recognize, and they were clearly flirting, talking about how great the conference was, how much they enjoyed each other's company, and there was a lot of talk about meeting up again after hours. I stared at that screen for what felt like forever. My stomach sank and my head started spinning. I felt sick just reading their messages, the way she was talking about him like he was some kind of secret, her new favorite thing. It was like I'd been punched in the gut. Suddenly all the little signs made sense. The irritability, the late nights, the hiding her phone. She'd been cheating on me, and I didn't even realize it until that moment. It was like my whole world just collapsed. I didn't know what to do, but I knew one thing: I couldn't keep going like this, not blind and in the dark anymore. That night I didn't sleep. I just sat there staring at her phone, replaying what I'd seen over and over in my head. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a deep, crushing sadness. How could Lisa do this, after everything we'd been through? The vacations, the quiet nights, the promises she made. I kept asking myself if I missed signs I should have caught earlier. Maybe I was blind, too trusting. Or maybe she was just better at hiding it than I gave her credit for. The worst part was the feeling of total helplessness. I wanted to confront her right then, to scream at her and demand answers, but I hesitated. I knew if I did it there and then, it would just turn into a big fight, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. Instead, I decided to wait until morning. I needed to calm down, think through what I had seen, and decide what my next move was. The next day, I woke up feeling raw, like I'd been run over by a truck. My mind kept circling back to those messages, and I was starting to feel numb. I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I took a deep breath, got dressed, and went to work like any other day. But my mind was elsewhere. I kept eyeing her from across the room, watching her act normal, pretending that she wasn't hiding something big. I wanted to scream at her, pound on the table, or maybe just walk out and never come back. That evening, I finally decided to do something about it. I needed to confront her directly. I came home early, the house feeling emptier than usual. When she finally arrived, she was all smiles, acting innocent, like she had no idea why I looked so tense. I looked her straight in the eye and asked, "Who's Mark?" Her face froze for a second, then she blinked and gave me that typical bitchy smirk. "Oh, that," she said, brushing it off. "Just some guy I talked to at the conference. Nothing serious. You're reading into it too much." But her tone was dismissive, defensive, like she was angry I even brought it up. I felt my blood boil. I told her I knew what was going on, that I'd seen her messages, and I demanded the truth. Her eyes flicked away, then she started lying big time. She said he was just a business acquaintance, that I was overthinking and that she hadn't done anything wrong. She called me insecure, said I was paranoid, and that I was ruining everything with my accusations. I didn't buy it. I knew she was lying. She always was good at spinning stories, twisting things to make herself look innocent. But I also saw the panic in her eyes that, to me at least, confirmed she was hiding something. Inside, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like this? I kept my voice steady, but I was boiling inside. I told her I was done pretending, that I was going to find out the truth no matter what it took. We argued for hours. She kept denying everything, said I was crazy or jealous, that she loved me and that I was ruining what we had. But I knew better. She'd been caught red-handed, and nothing she said could change that. The trust I once had was shattered, and as much as I wanted to believe she loved me and that she'd stop, deep down, I knew she'd been lying from the start. I didn't want to believe I'd been so blind, but her actions spoke volumes. That night I lay awake, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut again and again. The girl I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The betrayal hit hard, and I knew from that moment nothing would really be the same. Over the next few days, everything changed. I couldn't focus at work, and I kept replaying that night's confrontation in my head. Lisa acted like nothing was wrong, but I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. She kept insisting she hadn't done anything with Mark, that I was just jealous and paranoid. But I wasn't stupid. I knew better now. I'd seen enough. Still, part of me wanted to believe her. Maybe she'd just made a mistake, maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I knew I had to do something more concrete. One morning, I decided to get some proof again. I didn't trust her word anymore. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her social media accounts, anything I could find. It was a terrible, invasive thing to do, but I felt like I had no choice. I needed evidence. I found more texts with Mark, more images of them together at the conference, sometimes in private meetings, sometimes in those empty rooms she kept sneaking off to. It was clear they'd been more than just acquaintances. It was a full-blown affair, and I felt my stomach turn every time I saw new messages. I was furious. How could she lie so easily, betray everything we had? I'd always trusted her, and now I felt like I'd been played for a fool. That afternoon, I decided I'd had enough. I called her at work and told her to come home early. When she arrived, I was waiting for her in the living room, trembling with anger. I didn't want to waste time on her lies anymore. I told her I knew everything about Mark, about their meetings, about the sex she'd been having behind my back. She looked shocked at first, then defensive. Her face turned red, and she started screaming at me, calling me a jealous idiot, saying I was imagining things, that I was controlling. She argued that I was overreacting, that I was ruining her career, her reputation. But I cut her off. I told her I had enough, that I was done being played the fool, that I wanted the truth, no matter how ugly it was. That's when she hit her worst move. She begged. She played the victim, crying, saying she was sorry, that she loved me, and that Mark was just some stupid mistake she hadn't meant to get involved in. I looked into her eyes and saw the cold, disdainful look she'd had from the start. That was when I realized I couldn't trust her anymore, not her words, her apologies, her lies. I told her I was leaving for a while to think, and I walked out, leaving her there, crying and yelling behind me. That night I stayed in a hotel trying to process everything. I kept thinking about how she'd lied to me so easily, how she'd betrayed our vows and everything we built together. I felt numb, broken, yet somehow angry enough to want revenge. The next day I started planning. I needed a way to hit her where it hurt. She always called me insecure, weak, and a loser, but I wasn't going to be that guy anymore. If she thought she could cheat, lie, and get away with it, she was wrong. I decided I'd take control of this situation. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some fool she could manipulate anymore. I started gathering evidence of her other lies, little things I'd noticed but hadn't paid attention to. phone records, bank statements, anything that could give me leverage. At the same time, I began to prepare myself emotionally. I knew I had to stay strong, keep my dignity intact, and think about what I really wanted. I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo, pretending everything was okay. I had to make a choice, forgive and forget, or fight tooth and nail to make her regret what she'd done. And honestly, I was leaning toward the latter. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. Not anymore. I spent the next few days in a haze trying to figure out my next move. Part of me was furious, wanting to confront her again, demand she admit everything openly and see her squirm. The other part just wanted to get out and start over somewhere far away from this mess. But no matter which way I leaned, I knew I couldn't ignore what I'd found. The proof was there, and I couldn't pretend it didn't exist. I needed to act, and I needed to do it carefully. One afternoon, I decided to set a trap. I'd been watching her schedule, listening for any slip-ups, and I knew she'd try to cover her tracks. So I added a little more to my plan. I rigged her phone with a GPS tracker, just enough to follow her movements without her noticing. I also made sure I had access to her email account, just in case. It was dirty, I admit, but I was past caring about morality at this point. My marriage was hanging by a thread, and I was desperate to catch her in the act once and for all. That evening, I watched her leave the house. She was dressed up, looking like she was heading somewhere special. I followed her at a distance, heart pounding. She drove to some nearby hotel, checked in with a guy I didn't recognize, and then disappeared into a room with him. I sat in my car outside, listening to my own heartbeat. I'd finally caught her red-handed. She was cheating on me, and I had the evidence right there. I felt a surge of adrenaline. Part of me wanted to storm in, shout, and drag her out by her hair, but I knew better. If I did that, I'd just look like the angry fool she'd always accused me of being. Instead, I sat there, took a deep breath, and called a friend, someone I could trust. I told him everything, and he urged me to stay calm, to think about what I wanted to do next. I realized that now I had the proof, I had the power. I didn't need to be impulsive. I could let her keep digging her own grave. The next morning, I went back to the house. I waited for her to come home, knowing she'd be desperate to cover her tracks. When she arrived, she was tense, trying to act natural. I didn't say a word for a while, just looked at her. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the pictures and messages I'd saved. Her face drained of color, and I saw the panic finally set in. She tried to deny it again, but it was useless now. The evidence was irrefutable. Her reaction was classic. She started yelling, calling me crazy, possessive, insecure. She said I was ruining everything and that she'd never cheat if I just got over myself. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her I was done, that I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations, her betrayal. I told her I wanted her out of my life, that I was filing for divorce, and she could pack her things. She begged, of course, crying and screaming about how she loved me, that Mark was just some mistake, that she'd never meant for it to happen. But I didn't care. She'd already shown me who she really was. That night, I packed my own bags and left. I stayed at a friend's place for a few days, trying to gather my thoughts. The entire situation had taken such a toll on me, physically, emotionally, everything. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. I realized I'd been living in a fantasy, hoping she'd change or that it was just a phase. But the truth was, she'd betrayed me so many times I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was finally free from the lie. Now I'm just trying to rebuild. It's not easy. Every day feels like a roller coaster: anger, sadness, relief, regret. But I know one thing for sure. I'm not going to let her manipulate me again. I'm learning to trust myself, to listen to my gut. And I'm finally realizing what real loyalty looks like. If you're in a similar situation, my advice: don't ignore the signs. Don't let your partner gaslight you into thinking you're crazy. Gather your proof, stay calm, and do what's best for you even if it hurts. Because in the end, you're the only one who can protect your peace. After I made the decision to leave, everything moved faster than I expected. I contacted a lawyer, started the divorce proceedings, and arranged to have someone come and help her pack her things. I didn't want any unnecessary drama, but I also knew I couldn't just let her hang around pretending like everything was fine. Seeing her try to guilt me, plead, and lie through it all made me realize how much I'd been blind for so long. I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief as I watched her pack her designer bags, her face twisted with frustration and false tears. The night she left, I felt a weird emptiness but also a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in months, I could breathe without that gnawing suspicion eating me alive. I stayed up, just staring at the empty space where she'd been, wondering how I'd let myself get so tangled up in her lies. It hurt, but I knew I'd made the right choice. I kept telling myself I deserved someone who wouldn't look me in the eye and lie about cheating behind my back. In the days that followed, I started trying to piece my life back together. I stayed away from social media, stopped obsessing over her status updates, and focused on myself for once. I got back into the gym, began reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, and started thinking about what I wanted for my future. The betrayal was a punch to the gut, but it also became a wake-up call. I realized I'd spent too much time trying to keep her happy, trying to pretend everything was perfect, while ignoring the signs that she was already gone. One thing that surprised me was how many people reached out, friends, family, even coworkers. Everyone had seen the signs before I did, but nobody wanted to say anything. It made me realize how much I'd been trying to hide the truth, how much I'd been afraid to face it. Now, I'm not saying I'm completely healed, but I've taken my power back. I've started seeing a therapist, working through the feelings of betrayal, anger, and grief. It's not easy, but I know I have to heal for my sake. Looking back, I think the worst part is how much I doubted myself. I kept questioning whether I was overreacting, whether I had missed signs, whether I was too insecure. Now I see I wasn't crazy. She was the one lying, sneaking around, and breaking promises. I was just blind because I loved her, or maybe because I wanted to believe in the life we built together. But now I know better. Trust is everything, and once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to fix. So if you're reading this and you suspect your partner is cheating, my biggest advice is this: don't ignore your instincts. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking it's your fault. Gather your proof, stay calm, and think about what you really want. Sometimes the best thing is to walk away and reclaim your life. Because at the end of the day, you deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, not betrayal masked as a lie. And trust me, moving on is the best revenge of all. Now, looking back, I realize how much I've changed through all this. The whole experience was brutal, but it forced me to see what I was really worth. I used to think I was just some guy who got taken for a ride, but now I understand that I was just blind for too long. She was manipulative, selfish, and good at hiding who she really was. I've learned that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is walk away from what you thought you wanted, but in the end, it's what you need to do to save yourself. I don't hate her anymore. Honestly, I don't even feel that angry about her cheating. I feel more sad for her, that she's so caught up in her lies and manipulations that she doesn't see her own worth. But I do hate what she did to us, what she did to me. She shattered the trust I had, and that's something I'll have to rebuild from scratch. It's a long process, but I'm starting to see a future beyond her betrayal. What I've come to understand is that life goes on. No one's perfect, and people make mistakes, but some mistakes are too big to come back from if you're not willing to be honest and respectful in the first place. I've learned to trust myself again, to listen to that tiny voice inside that says when something's wrong. I've also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back, it's about reclaiming my happiness and dignity. So, here's what I want anyone reading this to take away. If you're in a situation where you suspect betrayal, don't dismiss it. Be brave enough to look for the truth, even if it's painful. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing isn't getting betrayed, it's staying in a relationship that's done nothing but hurt you. Protect yourself, know your worth, and don't be afraid to start over. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's hard to mend, but you can rebuild your life. I'm doing that now, and honestly, I feel a little lighter every day. The future's uncertain, sure, but at least now, it's mine again, free from her lies, her manipulations, and her betrayal.